Before there were armies, before there were empires, before there were wars fought across continents, there was a single moment. A human being picked up a rock, looked at it, and thought, I can make this sharper. That thought changed everything. But here is the part no history book ever tells you. The sword. The weapon that built civilizations, ended dynasties, and carved the borders of the modern world was not the product of genius. It was not the invention of a warrior or a king. It was the desperate solution to a problem that nearly wiped humanity off the map. And the story of how it happened is stranger than anything you were ever taught. Go back 10,000 years. Your ancestors are not carrying swords. They are carrying sharpened stones, bone clubs, flint blades barely the length of your hand. To use them, you have to get close enough to see your enemy's eyes, close enough that they can kill you just as easily as you can kill them. For thousands of years, that was simply the cost of survival, until one material changed everything. And it did not come from the earth. It fell from the sky. When archaeologists opened the burial chamber of Tutankhamun in 1925, they cataloged thousands of objects. But one artifact sat quietly near the king's right hand, a dagger with an iron blade. That should not have been remarkable, except iron did not exist in Egypt at that time. It was worth 10 times more than gold. Scientists tested the blade in 2016 using X-ray fluorescence. The results stopped them cold. The iron in Tutankhamun's dagger did not come from Earth. The chemical composition, high nickel, high cobalt, matched a meteorite that had fallen in northern Egypt. The ancient Egyptians had found a rock from space, shaped it into a blade, and buried it with a god-king. 3,000 years before the Iron Age, a pharaoh was buried with a sword made of star metal. That discovery tells you everything about what the sword meant to ancient humans. From the very beginning, it was not just a weapon, it was power. The physical proof that you controlled something no one else could touch. But to understand how the sword became the weapon that shaped civilization, you have to go back further. Around 5000 BCE, people across Turkey, Iran, and the Balkans began finding an unusual rock near riverbeds. When they hammered it, it bent. When they heated it, it softened into almost any shape. Copper. It holds an edge longer than stone, but strike bone with a copper blade and the blade folds. It is not a weapon, it is a prototype for one. The solution arrived through accident. Around 3200 BCE, a metalworker added the wrong rock to a copper smelting fire. The rock contained tin. The result was something that had never existed before. Bronze. Harder, stronger. And for the first time, a blade could be made long enough and strong enough to be a real weapon. Now here is the discovery that rewrote everything scholars thought they knew. In 1975, Italian archaeologists excavating a site in eastern Turkey called Arslantepe unearthed 9 long bronze blades. Not daggers, not spearheads, swords. Blades nearly 2 feet long with handles designed for a human grip. Dated to approximately 3300 BCE, the oldest true swords ever found anywhere on Earth. They predate the pyramids, made by a culture whose name we do not even know, in a city we only found by digging. But if bronze was this powerful, why did it take another 2,000 years for the sword to dominate the ancient world? The answer is one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. Around 1200 BCE, in roughly 50 years, every major Bronze Age civilization collapsed. Egypt was shaken to its foundations. The Hittites vanished. Mycenaean Greece fell so completely that the Greeks forgot how to write. The palace of Ugarit in Syria was burned and never rebuilt. Its final clay tablets, still in the kiln when the city fell, record panicked letters begging for help that never came. Historians call this the Bronze Age collapse. They still cannot agree on what caused it. But the consequence for the sword was absolute. Bronze requires tin. Tin traveled trade routes spanning thousands of miles. When those routes collapsed, entire armies found themselves holding useless blades. And in that vacuum, a new metal stepped forward: iron. The problem was not availability. The problem was heat. Smelting iron requires temperatures above 1500 degrees Celsius, far beyond any Bronze Age furnace. But someone figured out how to get there. The technique spread fast, because the incentive was absolute. Whoever controlled iron controlled war. In Rome, this was taken to its logical extreme. The gladius, short, wide, built for stabbing, was not designed for heroic combat. It was engineered for industrial killing. Roman soldiers were trained to step into an enemy's swing and drive the blade upward at close range. The sword, in Roman hands, was not a weapon. It was a system, and the Roman Empire was the product of that system applied across 3 continents for 500 years. But Rome's iron was crude compared to what was being built on the other side of the world. In southern India, between 300 BCE and 100 CE, metalworkers sealed iron ore inside clay crucibles with plant material and fired them for days at controlled temperatures. The result was a steel of extraordinary purity they called Wootz. When researchers at the Technical University of Dresden analyzed Wootz blades in 2006, they found carbon nanotubes, atomic structures that modern science only learned to produce deliberately in the late 20th century. Ancient Indian metalworkers were engineering matter at the nanoscale. This steel traveled west into Syria, where it became Damascus steel. Blades sharp enough to cut a falling piece of silk. Blades that flexed instead of shattering. Crusaders who encountered them sent letters home describing them with something close to fear. Scientists have been trying to reverse engineer the formula for decades. They still cannot fully replicate it. In Japan, smiths worked with iron sand from riverbeds, smelted in a clay furnace called a tatara, into a raw steel called tamahagane, then folded repeatedly to layer hard and soft steel into a single blade. Under force, it bent slightly and sprang back to true. A European longsword would have snapped. The katana may be the most precisely engineered object ever produced by human hands without the aid of machines. And then, there is the sword that should not exist. In the 19th century, divers recovering objects from German rivers found Viking blades made of steel so pure that chemists initially refused to believe they were medieval. Each one was inscribed with a single word, Velfbert. Metallurgical analysis revealed the truth. The Ulfbert swords used crucible steel, the same process as Indian Wootz, with a carbon content 3 times higher than any other European blade of the period, 400 years ahead of European metallurgy. The likely source, Viking trade routes running east through Russia, down the Volga, and into the Islamic world where crucible steel was already established. A Norse warrior on a frozen fjord was holding a blade whose technology began in an Indian crucible 1,000 years earlier. The ancient world was not isolated, it was a network, and the sword was the object that connected it. Here is what all of this means. Every breakthrough in the history of the sword happened because someone faced a crisis with no solution and refused to stop. No tin, find iron. Iron too crude, build hotter furnaces. Steel still impure, fold it until it is not. The sword was not built by warriors. It was built by problem solvers living in a world where the wrong answer got you killed. That is the same mind you are carrying right now. The same instinct that picked up a rock and thought, I can make this sharper. The first sword was never invented. It was earned. Through crisis. Through fire. Through 10,000 years of humans refusing to give up. The sword dominated warfare for 3,000 years. Then, in a single century, it became completely obsolete. Not because someone built a better sword, but because someone built something the sword had no answer for at all. That story is next. Subscribe so you do not miss it. And before you go, drop one comment. Which civilization do you believe forged the greatest sword in human history, and why?